Welcome to From Betrayal to Breakthrough. I'm Dr. Debi Silber, and today's guest is Lisa Fraley. Lisa, JD, is a legal coach and attorney. She takes a holistic approach to law by blending expertise as a former healthcare attorney in a large corporate law firm with the care of a health and life coach trained through IIN and Coach U. Her goal is to make law easy to understand, accessible, and affordable, and she uniquely aligns legal steps with the chakras. With a certificate in sustainable business strategy from Harvard Business School Online, she's the author of Easy Legal Steps That Are Also Good for Your Soul, #1 Amazon bestseller, and host of the Legally Enlightened podcast, offering bite-sized legal tips in 20 minutes or less. Lisa has spoken on international stages from the Bellagio to British Columbia and has been a legal guest expert on over 350 podcasts and webinars. For legal tips and info, go to lisafraley.com. If you think betrayal only happens in personal relationships, think again. Today, we're diving into a kind of betrayal that doesn't get nearly enough attention: workplace and business betrayal. Whether it's a boss who undermined you, a colleague who took credit for your work, or a client who ghosted you on a payment, these moments cut deep and can leave lasting scars. My guest today is not only my personal attorney, but a brilliant legal mind who blends law with compassion, Lisa Fraley. We're talking about how to legally protect yourself in business, how to set boundaries that actually hold, and why betrayal shows up so often in entrepreneurial and corporate spaces. You're going to walk away from this episode feeling clearer, stronger, and more protected on every level. Let's dive in. Okay, everybody, you are in for such a treat today. Not only do we have the amazing Lisa Fraley with us, she is my personal attorney. And you are going to learn everything having to do with workplace betrayal, or even whether it's workplace, entrepreneurial workplace, corporate workplace, whatever. She is going to share the ins and outs, the good, the bad, the ugly, and so much more. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me, Debbie. It's so great to be here.
Of course. So, the reason why I wanted you to come on the podcast is, of course, this is about, anybody who's been betrayed. And usually we talk about relational, but it happens, just a romantic relationship or a spouse or partner. But so often these experiences happen within our workplace. So can you share what you have seen? And let's just start there.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at your own experiences of being in workplaces, one of the things I think that comes up all the time that I know, Debbie, you teach about how when you're having a relational conflict or betrayal, that can like seep into your daily life at work. But also, one of the things that I think comes up for me is thinking about bosses or prior colleagues who've also betrayed you. And in the workplace itself, I worked in a large law firm, I've worked in other corporate settings, and sometimes when environments are cutthroat or they're competitive, people betray you. They say things behind your back. They aren't necessarily flattering to you, to your boss. There are bosses who have been competitive with me, oddly, when I'm just doing my job. And clearly they have a position higher than mine, but something about my presence or knowledge has been threatening to them, even though that's the last thing I would ever want to do is appear in any way to make a boss uncomfortable. So I've had several experiences where my bosses have actually undermined me. And that felt like such a betrayal when all I was trying to do was show up and try to do a great job, provide excellent work, and please them to a degree, right? And excel in the work that I do. So I think the betrayal in the workplace itself can feel like a wound that needs to be healed. And in the workplace, of course, there's no one talking about this. There are no tools that people have to deal with this. It's sort of unspoken. But I bet that lots and lots of people listening have had betrayal in a workplace themselves, in a corporate setting.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why we're bringing PBT into corporate, for exactly that reason, because this happens all the time. And here you are, when you think about how much time are we spending in a workplace, and if it's stressed, if it's uncomfortable, if it's a stressful environment, if it's uncomfortable because of something spoken or unspoken, that's going to be really painful. And what do you see happening in these environments? And you know what? It just reminded me of, I used to speak and I used to go into law firms. And there was something so interesting about it because there'd be this big conference table, let's just say.
Right.
I would speak, everybody would be stoic. I mean, I'm talking like not a
Yes,
peep, but when
that's
I would
right.
leave, there'd be a line out the door. Debi, I'm going to have a heart attack. I can't take the pressure. This is too much. So
Yes.
what, yeah, tell me like a story or two about what happened either for you or someone that you know of a workplace betrayal in corporate,
Yeah.
and then we'll get to the entrepreneurs after.
Yeah, I think I mentioned before that it's I've been in uncomfortable situations where there was one situation where I was a young lawyer researching an issue. And the job of young associates is actually to dig in and do all the research. The job of the partners are to go out and make money and rainmake and work with clients. They're not the ones usually with their hands in the current research. And that's the way it's supposed to be. But I did this research and I discovered that what the partner had been talking to me about was actually not correct. It was completely just outdated. And there's no reason why he would have had to know that. He was a big fancy corporate partner. He was a big yacht and like just very corporate. And and I say that with respect to, of course, his longevity in his career, but he made it so uncomfortable for me to be able to actually speak the truth of what the law was because he was belittling me. And I worked in a very sort of open-minded law firm for as law firms go. They were respectful of women. This had nothing to do with being a woman. It really was about being sort of a junior attorney and how dare you tell me something when I'm the partner and I know this information. I'm the expert. You're not the expert. And I felt a sense of betrayal, oddly, because I'm supposed to be doing this work to tell you updates about the law. And I felt as though he was tarnishing my reputation and tarnishing my knowledge and lack of experience when I was really just showing up to do my job. And it came with me for a long time. It made me question myself and question my knowledge and question my ability to use my voice. And I think it took me a while to get over that.
And it's so common because think about it. Here you are, like you said, you're supposed to do the research, find
Right.
what's new. And
Yes.
all it's doing now is discouraging you from doing what you thought you were supposed to do. And then now, the more you sit with that, now you're thinking, okay, well, it's not safe to speak up.
That's right. And the betrayal part, like some might think, oh, well, you just didn't feel safe to speak up. But the betrayal part was I thought I was aligned with the integrity of this firm, which was to provide excellent service to our clients with current research, doing hard work to actually get the right answers. And I felt like somehow I was being told I was wrong for something that I knew was right, not only academically, like intellectually correctly from the research, but I mean from an ethics standpoint or from an integrity standpoint. Wait a minute, this is what I'm supposed to do is to protect you in this department by telling you what is actually true. I felt a sense of betrayal, and it was a surprise to me, and it hurt me. Like the hurt of it surprised me rather than just having an intellectual argument about whose position is correct. It hurt me, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
And it's so interesting when you bring up integrity. This is something personally I struggle with. I've never been able to understand. And this is a scenario where I see it a lot where let's just say someone knows that someone like an attorney knows that their client has misrepresented, done something wrong, did
Mm.
something hateful, harmful, hurtful, and represents them.
Oh, yes, we can talk about that.
Can we talk about that? Because I
Sure.
can't wrap my head around that.
Yeah, and a lot of people can't. And by the way, I should mention I worked in a corporate law firm that did not deal with criminal defense or criminal work.
Mhm.
But to your question, that's one of the first things that you learn in law school and criminal law is like, how could you ever represent a rapist? How could you ever represent someone who's killed someone? How could you ever represent someone who's embezzled money and stolen from people? And I get that. We all get that from a sort of a heartfelt integrity sense. But when you're a lawyer, you're actually trained and you're trained this way too as a therapist, Debi, to keep your emotional distance from the client you're talking to, in that it's not ethically appropriate for my feelings to get in the way of the job of the lawyer, which is to represent someone in a court of law, which is to speak for them in a system that we're trained in to communicate,
Yeah.
to actually your integrity is with the concept that in this country people have a right to a defense. like period. People have a right to a good defense, a strong defense, an accurate defense, an ethical defense. And it's not your job. It is not your job as a lawyer to judge them, to already convict them in your head. It's actually like unethical of you as a lawyer to do that.
Wow.
Your job is to look at the facts and present that client in the best light possible, without lying, without doing anything unethical, without doing anything cheating wise. But your job is to defend them and give them a proper defense. It's the job of the court or a jury or a judge and a jury to be able to decide whether the person's guilty. So you as a lawyer take an oath to sort of the process and the rights that people have in this country under the Constitution, not to whether or not the person did it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I'm so glad you shared that. It's I can see that. I can see
Yeah.
it. Not sure but it's the first time I've ever heard it that way. So thank you for that. And for those who probably had the
But we're
same question
trained
as me.
from day one to believe this and to stand by this, so it gets easier. I mean, I've never had to do it in real life, but conceptually, of course I could do that because my integrity is to the process and to the person who has a right in this country to be represented.
Right. Okay. Very interesting. I'm so glad you shared that. Let's talk about the entrepreneur, because this is something in being in business for 33 years, I can completely relate to. And I'm always trying to get into the minds and the hearts of our listeners and viewers that they may be in this position too. Let's talk about some of the things that happen as an entrepreneur, because many of these things have happened to me personally. So what are some of the most common things you see?
It's interesting because as we grow as small business owners or entrepreneurs or coaches, you will encounter more issues. It's just part of the growth process. It's part of you learning how to create, compassionate and caring and loving, but boundaries around your time and your energy and your work and your website and your content and your income. So there's a lot of betrayal that can happen, unfortunately, from clients, from team members, from business partners, from people out there in the world, stealing your content. And so if we kind of look at each of these groups, if you look at clients, which is one of the biggest and most painful areas, I think, where people feel betrayed, because clients can do things like cancel their program with you halfway through. They cannot pay you and withhold payment or do a chargeback. They can download content from a course and then use the content and ask for a refund. And all of these things are little mini betrayals, I think, or sometimes larger betrayals, because that's not how that's supposed to work. If you have put your content and served your client and done your part as a coach or an entrepreneur or provided a product, they are supposed to actually follow the rules and pay you and not drop out. I mean, if they want to drop out, that's fine, but sometimes they can't ask for their money back. That's your policy, is they don't get their money back. And so these client situations are cause the most misunderstanding and stress for people. And so what I always like to teach is that sometimes people don't realize when you put legal documents in place, like a client agreement or a program terms of use for a group program, you're actually setting forth the rules at the start so that, first of all, you have stronger legal and energetic boundaries from the start, and then you have legal language to fall back on afterwards. But these types of things like refunds and clients not paying are just part of how we evolve as entrepreneurs and their situations, so you can show up in your leadership.
Oh my gosh, my stomach is turning as you're bringing up these examples, because I'm thinking of throughout the years how things have happened. And I love that you have created just amazing agreements for us and for PBT. But I do remember, I remember the most bizarre things happening. It was a client of mine, and I remember sharing a story, and I always share stories so that it teaches a point, right? And I'm sharing a story, and I see on Facebook my story, she's sharing my story as if it happened to her.
Isn't that incredible how people do that? Like, what are they thinking?
Let it go and whatever, but I couldn't. Just
no, well, that's your story.
Nice story. And then she took it down. But it happens so often where someone will read one of my books and think, oh, I can be a coach now, or whatever. And so now help us with the way to handle this, because I've probably had every single one of these scenarios happen. And of course we feel enraged. We feel betrayed. We feel, here we are playing by the rules, and someone decided to do something so unethical or whatever. So just to work us through, help us through, how do you deal with that?
Okay, so let's say that if someone doesn't pay you, they go partway through your 6 week program and halfway through at week 3, they're like, I'm out, I can't do this, I'm in a financial straits, or I don't like your program and I just want out. And you have a no refund policy
Hmm.
already in place. And so they just stop paying, or sometimes they'll do a chargeback. But the concept is they're not giving you the money that you said that they agreed to in the contract that they would
Hmm.
pay you. So I come from sort of my whole brand is based around legal love, which I know sounds like a juxtaposition of two things that are completely unrelatable, but that's part of the reason why I built this brand, because I do think that you can do things in a loving way, and you can reframe what you're doing as creating boundaries and policies for clients that actually help them as well as help you. And even if they think that they need to have their money back, they're really doing a disservice to themselves, first of all, by not finishing your program and getting the growth that they want. And they could be holding themselves back because they're afraid or scared of actually transforming and doing the work. We all know that. So, what do? Well, in the context of legal love, I always tell people to start with kindness first. Start with grace, start with kindness. Find a way for them for you to say something like, "Hey, I totally hear you and understand that you might not be happy with your program right now and you really need to discontinue payment, or you're having financial straits. But when you signed up for this program, you agreed in the contract, which is attached right here, that you agreed to make full payment. And it's a policy of my business." Those are words that are really great to use so that you don't feel so personally like mean to someone.
Hmm.
Is you can say it's a policy of my business that people honor their full payments. And then you move into a space of like, I'm sure you're not coming from an unkind place. I'm sure you're just in a difficult time. Like, have compassion for the person. But then you could offer whatever solution is helpful for you. Like, hey, would it help if you made reduced payments for a longer period of time? Or hey, would it help if you took a pause for 1 or 2 months of your payments and then pick back up and continue to make them? Like, whatever feels good to you, there are various options. But when you come from kindness first, you create space for that person to come back to you in their humanity and with their vulnerability to tell you what's going on. When we come out of the gate with that anger and aggression and frustration that you are legitimately feeling and allowed to feel, it doesn't move you closer to solving the problem. So, as a lawyer, I'm all about how do we actually get you the solution you want, which is for them to pay you. So, start with kindness. You can always get harsher later. When I say start with kindness, usually that can be in an email, or you could have a phone conversation, but eventually you want to get it into writing so that it's an email to show that you're trying to actually remedy the situation. Then later, if you do end up having, if it's for a significant sum of money and you do end up needing to go to a small claims court or hire a lawyer, the first thing they're going to ask you is, have you tried to reconcile this with your client first? Every lawyer should say, first, have you tried to bring this to a conclusion and resolve this amiably? And so you want to be able to say, yes, I have.
Mm.
And you want to show that you're working towards a solution. So after that, then you can go to a lawyer and have them write a more formal letter, or then you could file a lawsuit in small claims court or larger court. But the legal solutions are always there for you. But the kindness part, you only have a window to show.
Mhm.
So I always go back to that golden rule of, how would you want to be treated if this were your situation? The client doesn't always share the reasons why they are in the situation they are. They might be embarrassed they can't pay for it. They might have a health problem in their family. Their spouse might have lost their job. We just have no idea what's going on, and we can make up stories of what we think is going on. But really, the more you can step into your compassion first, I actually think that de-escalating your emotion and stepping into compassion. I actually have a podcast episode in the Legally Enlightened podcast about how that's actually a legal strategy to help you get to the solution that you're seeking. So that would just be one example of a way to approach a client who doesn't pay.
Okay, that's very helpful. And what do you do when, let's say, you come from compassion? You see, I'm getting a little
Yes.
personal here. You come from a place of compassion, and then you see the chargeback.
Right. Okay. So remember, I said compassion first. You see the charge pack, you still can go to that person with compassion. And the compassion argument may be better suited when people steal or copy your work, where
Mm.
you can say, hey, you might not realize that your website page looks exactly like my website page. You might have been using it for inspiration and copied it down and kind of forgot that you forgot to edit it or change it into your own voice and create your own work. So you probably didn't realize you copied my content. So I just love to ask if you could change that within the next 15 days or whatever. So like
Right.
sometimes with stealing work or something, and then the person can say, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I forgot. I didn't mean to. And some people really innocently
Mm-hmm.
don't do it on purpose. They really actually legitimately don't do it on purpose. Some people say, well, sue me. I'm allowed to copy whatever I want. And
Oh
well,
my
okay,
gosh.
then you're going to move to the legal solution. But giving the grace at the outset allows them to back up and say, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I'll change it immediately. I had no idea. I didn't know you had a trademark. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to copy your trademark. Like you can give them an out,
Mm-hmm.
which the angry side of you doesn't love that. But there are other ways, as you know, Debbie, to help people. You need to resolve your emotions in a different place
Right.
with a professional or a coach or a family member or whoever you're comfortable with. But in the context of a legal situation, we're trying to get you to the goal that you want. And the goal that you want is to either not have a chargeback, not have them steal your work, get your work back, take the work off of their website. So you have to think in a more strategic mindset of getting the goal that you want, and addressing your emotions separately. But with your chargeback situation, here's the thing. A chargeback is when someone will actually contact PayPal or their credit card, and they'll actually tell the bank or PayPal to reverse the charge, that they didn't get like all of the program content for you, or you didn't deliver on the contract. And actually, this is one perfect example of why it's really important to have a client agreement. The higher the cost of your program, the more you need an actual client agreement that the client signs with a pen or signs electronically. Because the first thing that the bank or PayPal is going to ask you is, do you have a signed client agreement from this client? And they're going to look at the client agreement, and you'll be able to say, I provided all the things in the services
Mm-hmm.
section. They did not comply with section 5 around payment. And that's the proof that you need to help you win your case. You don't always win with a bank or PayPal because the laws are designed actually to protect the consumer. There's a consumer protection banking laws, but you have a better chance of winning. So if you see a chargeback, then it is important for you to go through the appropriate appeals process through PayPal or the bank and follow the chargeback challenge or chargeback appeal process, whatever they call it, so that you can get your money back. Immediately go into that mode. But I just want to emphasize the reason we come from love and kindness and grace first is because it can be it's the right thing to do, because sometimes people do things innocently, but also it's sometimes a really strong legal strategy that actually gets you the result that you want. And that's the goal.
And that makes total sense. So it's, yes, as far as the anger and frustration about the betrayal piece, that's where we come in.
Right,
But I see what
exactly.
you're saying. Yeah, and I remember it's so interesting. One of our mutual friends had a program and got an email from someone else promoting her new program, which was a
Mhm.
complete and total ripoff of my friend's program. So it
Yeah.
was almost like it was bad enough that it was copied. She got an email to purchase it. So it's,
Exactly. And it's amazing. There are really kind people out there who will send emails and say, oh, by the way, did you know that like Susie Q
mhm.
over there is sharing your content? And by the way, Debbie, when I said in that moment of like processing your feelings in that moment with a therapist or a coach, or yes, they all need to use your program. But in that precise moment on that exact day, when they're like, ah, I'm going
Mm,
through the roof, they
yeah,
need to process it separately from in communication with
totally.
the client. That's what I'm referring to. But
Totally,
yes, your
totally.
programs are amazing to help people heal from these situations.
Yeah, and they happen all the time. So
Yeah.
is there, tell us a story about somebody that you've worked with where there was a scenario and how it got resolved.
Okay. So here's a scenario that felt like a deep wounding to my client, but really is a lesson that we all can learn. Okay. So my client had a client agreement. She was a very successful business coach. She made over $1 million a year. She'd been doing this a very long time. And she never had her client agreement reviewed by a lawyer because she pulled it together, she copied and pasted. People do this all the time to get started, and we lawyers get it. But once you get going, you need to actually have your documents reviewed by a lawyer, because what happened was she was working with a high end client in a one-on-one program that was a $15,000 program. And this particular business coach was very hands on. She really wanted to help people be successful and kind of said, if you don't make X amount of money at the end of this program, I will do XYZ steps to help you do so. I don't always suggest that business coaches take that approach, but that was her
Mm,
approach. And so she was very invested in this client. And about halfway through the program, the client asked for a refund of the $15,000.
oof.
And my coach client went to her agreement and realized she did not have a refund policy. No refund policy. She had great payment policies. Here's when the payments due. Here's how much it costs. Here's what the installments are. Here's how you make your payments by PayPal credit card. Here's what happens if you don't make a payment. Here's what happens if you miss calls. Like, she had all kinds of great content in her client agreement, nothing about refunds. And so she was in a position where not only did she feel hurt, that her whole philosophy was, I'm going to give you all I've got to reach your goal, more than most coaches usually do, or that even is usually recommended. And now she felt super betrayed that this client was asking for their money back. And the hard lesson she had to learn was that she didn't have the right language in her client agreement to have language to fall back on to say, I don't give any refunds. Yeah. So she had to give $15,000 back.
Oh, after pouring her heart and soul in. Oh my gosh.
That's it. And that was that feeling of that personal betrayal of how could my client do this to me? But then also she beat herself up a little bit for being so far along in her business and not actually having her documents reviewed. And now people are using AI to create legal documents, which is the worst thing to do on the planet. Very much have those documents reviewed because people think that they're parts included and they're just not there.
Yeah.
And bright, capable, smart people just aren't lawyers. So it was really, really very difficult for her emotionally and also from a business perspective.
I can see that. And also, I imagine things change. So even if you have something in place from a million years ago, like I did, and then I remember sharing with you, it needed to be updated, which
that's right.
It's an important thing. How is there a certain amount of time that you should wait until something's reviewed? Like what do you recommend?
That's a great idea. I'm now recommending more every 6 months because people change their programs quickly. Sometimes if you only launch a program once a year, then maybe once a year is the appropriate time to have your contract reviewed. But if you have a spring launch and a fall launch of your main signature program, you might have changed things in your program or your payment price or your refund policy period, or things you're not thinking about are actually written in the contract that you need the contract to actually reflect. So anytime you're launching a brand new program or anytime you're rerunning a program that you've changed in some way, it's really important to have your agreements looked up, particularly your client agreements. And right now we're talking about protecting your income. These agreements also protect your content by having intellectual property language in place. So if you've changed your content, you might have to change the program description of the client agreement. If you've changed the price, you might have to change the agreement to protect your income. So every time you run a new program or edit it in any way, please, please, please have your document reviewed.
And this isn't the kind of thing that we should be thinking of on our own. If we're the creators, if we're the visionaries, we're not the attorneys too. So that's why we really need the right people in place. And I am so grateful for people like you who can help us. So as we wrap up, Lisa, what do you want to make sure everybody knows?
What I want you all to know is that if the big takeaway from this talk today is obviously use Debi's resources to help you when you have some type of betrayal. That's the first thing, the PPT program, of course. Second of all, please have your agreements reviewed and make sure you have a strong refund policy in place. And I do have a free refund policy guide to tell you how to have a strong refund policy, tell you what things to look for so that you can look at your refund policy and see if anything is missing so you can tighten it up. And you can just go to lisafraley.com/refund-proof to be able to get that and check your refund policy. But this is such an important step for you to boost your own boundaries, create your own clear policies, and that will reduce conflict and betrayal that you experience in your business.
Everybody, do you see why Lisa is my personal attorney? I am telling you, when it relates to business, I just want to stay in my lane and I want to hand it over to people who are so much smarter in these areas than me. And she is the one that I trust completely with all of these aspects of business. And I wish I knew you sooner because it would have saved a lot of heartache. But the good thing is I could feel like everything is buttoned up and solid and strong because of the work that you've done for us and so many other people that benefit from who you are. Lisa, thank you so much for your wisdom.
Debbie. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for your wisdom and everything you shared today. I know everybody gained so much from what you shared. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind thoughts and thank you for having me. And thank you everyone for paying attention to the legal parts of your business. You will never regret that you did. So thank you so much, Debbie.
Wasn't that amazing? Lisa's insight is such a gift, especially when it comes to navigating those murky waters of business betrayal with strength, grace, and legal clarity. Stay in touch with her by grabbing her amazing gift at lisafraley.com/refundproof, and we'll have all of her information in the show notes at thepbtinstitute.com/podcast. Here's my biggest takeaway. Whether you're working inside a company or running your own, betrayal can shake your confidence. But with the right support and the right legal tools, it doesn't have to derail you or your business and career. If this episode hit home for you, share it with someone who needs it, leave a review, and as always, take the next step towards healing at thepbtinstitute.com. Thanks for listening. Can't wait to be with you next time, and here's to your breakthrough.